Where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to Trust and Estates Weekly. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and I'm here every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to talk about estate planning and probate and trust administration, typically from the prospect of professionals who do this for a living. Obviously, that's the definition of professional, but also for those of you who are dealing with your own estate plan, or perhaps you are in the midst of the administration of an estate and you want to be able to speak to your advisors more cogently, or if you're handling it yourself, you want to know better what are the issues and how you might handle them. So today I'm going to be talking about whether you should become a professional fiduciary. So for people who have watched the show before, you know that here in California there is a profession called a licensed professional fiduciary. California is the only state that has a license to do this, although other states are considering it. And I talk to people on a pretty regular basis who are thinking about maybe I should become a professional fiduciary. And so I thought I would do a show specifically on this topic. And that way in the future I can say, well, I go to, Trust and Estates Weekly and search the show I did on becoming a professional fiduciary, and that will, I think, give you a lot of information. So I will say that here in California, fiduciaries are not restricted to only administrating trusts and probates. So a professional fiduciary may also act as a guardian and as a conservator. Okay, those are significantly different roles than acting as what's known sort of globally as a personal representative, i.e., a trustee, or a professional fiduciary wouldn't act as an executor, but as an administrator. Okay, so my work is acting as a personal representative. I don't do conservatorships or guardianships, but a professional fiduciary license here in California would qualify someone to fill those roles as well. Now, if someone is going to be just administrating one estate, or a trustee in one trust that's not related to them by family, they don't need to have a professional fiduciary license. However, once you're going to be doing two or more, you need to have this license. And it's interesting to note that even judges serving in the probate court are a little bit unclear about this issue. So that is the standard. Two or more, situations that you're not connected to essentially by familial ties. Okay, you need to have a license. Okay, so to get a license, first of all, requires that you meet educational standards. And actually, here I'm gonna bring up the professional fiduciary website so you can see this. Oops, I'm gonna learn how to spell. Here we go. Professional Fiduciary Bureau. Okay, here we go. And got it. All right. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And here we go. We'll enlarge this so you can see it better. Okay, so the Professional Fiduciary Bureau which is part of the Department of Consumer Affairs here in California, is the the bureau, if you will, that's in charge of licensing. Okay, let me get rid of this message right here. Okay, and let's go over to applicants. Okay, and well, this is going to come up every time, I see. Okay, well, there you go. Okay, so you can see here that the application fee is $600. Okay. You have to pass an exam that's administered through the Center for Guardianship Certification. And the initial license fee is $1,300. Now, unlike any other license I've ever held or heard of in California, this license has to be renewed annually. So you pay $1,300 a year. Okay. And that's not a small amount. By contrast, the fee for real estate agents is, I believe, $625 every 4 years. Okay. So you can see that the professional fiduciary license fee is almost 8 times the fee for a real estate agent. Okay. Part of the reason is because there are so few of them. And I think the other reason is because the money that we often have in our charge, it can be a lot, and so the Professional Fiduciary Bureau is very, very careful. Okay, so let's look at the application checklist here. Okay, so you need to complete, oh, wait, this doesn't show what I wanted it to. Sorry about that. I'm looking for the, I want to show you the, let's see if they have it here. Okay, this is the application. Okay, yeah. Okay, so here you go. This is what I wanted to show you. So applicants are required to complete 30 hours of pre-licensing education, including at least 1 hour of instruction in cultural competency. Okay, so typically where you'll get that education is through something called the oh, oops, wrong one. Oh, shoot. Professional Fiduciary Association. Okay, so the Professional Fiduciary Association of California, I'm going to switch over to their website now. Replace, here we go. Okay, so I did my application studies through the PFA's course of study. It was relatively inexpensive. They call it the Fiduciary Academy. Okay, and it was relatively inexpensive. It was of decent quality. Frankly, I wouldn't say it was particularly high quality, but it was pretty good. So this is the Fiduciary Academy home. Okay, and enrollees. So through this platform, enrollees gain access to our range of high quality education, all approved for continuing education credits by both the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau of California and PFAC. So you can sign up for the pre-licensing education program here. You can see it costs $1,500 to do that. You have 3 years to complete it, 36 months. Okay, it sort of coordinates with the CGC, which is the Conservator and Guardianship Association, and it covers all the different parts. It covers all the aspects of being a professional fiduciary, as well as having a self-study section for the fiduciary exam itself. Now, I will tell you that I didn't find the exam to be particularly difficult, but I have a pretty long and deep, um, you know, background in this kind of information. So um, that's how I was. So that's how I found it. Um, okay, so this is the background you need. And let's see. I don't think it's going to give me the list. Yeah, okay, here you go. Here we go. Okay, so here's the curriculum. So you have an introduction, which is just generally speaking about conservatorships, probates, trust, powers of attorney, guardianships, fundamentals. Then there's a part on conservatorship. There's a part on asset management. There's a part on trust. There's professional practice. Okay, so what's interesting is a large amount of the coursework is on financial issues. Okay, however, most people who get the license appear to be people who want to handle conservatorships and guardianships, and they're coming out of a healthcare background, and maybe that's why the emphasis in PFAC is on financial issues, because the people who are getting the license don't have a background in those financial, don't have a financial background. So be that as it may, um, again, the information is fine, but it is not going, like a lot of pre-licensing education, the material is not going to prepare you to be a personal representative of an estate or trust all by itself. Okay, there's just too much to know on a practical basis about how finances work, how real estate works, how businesses operate. None of that is covered in PFAC's information. You're taking those classes really just to fulfill the pre-education requirement so that you can then sit for the exam and get your license. So if you don't have a background on the financial side of these issues, then you would be well advised, even prior to getting your license, to talk to some professional fiduciary firms and see if there's going to be an opportunity for you to work with someone where you can get the practical knowledge that you need in order to learn the business and go on to success. And I've been contacted from time to time, not particularly often, but from time to time, by people who are new to the business and they're looking to learn, and they are not necessarily having an easy time of it. This is not to discourage you. It's only to say that you're going to want to do your homework to make sure that you have a path that will essentially provide for you to learn how to fulfill your duties properly. Okay, because as a professional fiduciary, in the name, right, you are always acting in a fiduciary uh, uh, role. You don't have room for errors. Okay, so it is important that if you don't already have the background, that you have a way to get it. Okay, so those are the basics of actually getting the license. It's no different than getting any other license, certainly that I've ever had. I've had a real estate license for, gosh, almost 40 years. I've had various security licenses. They all work pretty much the same way. There's a pre-education requirement. You sit for an exam. Once you pass the exam, you apply for the license. Once you have the license, you're obligated to do continuing education and periodically renew the license, for which there is a fee. I will say, just to digress for a moment, while licenses today are looked at as a way to protect the public, the history of licensing, which dates back to the 19th century, is really much more about the government generating revenue and excluding certain groups from certain professions. For example, doctors being licensed was originally a way to exclude women from practicing in medicine, especially what was known as midwifery, that is, helping women have babies. Licensing of various trades. New York was infamous for this, was a way of excluding Black Americans from being able to participate in those trades. So while the history of licensing is, shall we say, something less than public spirited, today the idea behind licensing is to protect the public, and so they want to make sure that people are properly qualified to begin with and that they maintain those qualifications. All taken together, though, no licensing regime prepares you to practice a particular profession. That's something you're going to have to gain on your own, outside of and in addition to the licensing regime. Okay, let's take a quick break. When life brings unexpected changes, managing inherited property shouldn't add to your stress. Magnum Properties specializes in probate and trust real estate management. We handle the complexities while you focus on what matters most. From property maintenance to tenant relations, from legal compliance to maximizing value, we're your trusted partner through every step. Magnum Properties, Inc., turning property challenges into peace of mind. Call us today at 213-264-4396 or visit magnumprops.com. Okay, so this is Trust and Estates Weekly, and I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel. I'm talking about becoming a professional fiduciary and whether it's really something that you should consider as a professional endeavor. So I talked about how you get the license. Now let's talk about some of the pros and cons of becoming a professional fiduciary. So I was talking with somebody yesterday, don't remember who, and the person was asking me about my work and what I did, and did I like it, that sort of thing. And my response was, in general, the work is meaningful, meaning that I get to help people, and I get to help people oftentimes when they're at a very vulnerable, if not the most vulnerable time in their life. So because my practice is solely as a personal representative, I take on my role when somebody has died, and oftentimes the loved ones who are left behind are they're very sad, upset about the passing of their loved one. Okay, not always, right? We don't live in a perfect world, but usually there is a grief event connected with my being involved with the situation. Even for conservators and guardians, there is probably a grief event happening or pending for the situations in which they get involved. And so helping people who are vulnerable, who can potentially be prey to unscrupulous behavior that would steal their money, that would abuse them, child abuse, elder abuse, those sort of things, is a very meaningful thing to do. Helping people through their grief, helping people through a transition in their life where they are no longer able to take care of their own affairs the way they may have previously, can be very difficult. I'm dealing with a situation like that right now, where the person this is a woman who's been in business for decades and decades. She's been retired for a while now, but she certainly knows business very well. She was in the banking business for a long time, and it's unfortunately, it's just gotten to the point where it's too difficult for her to keep up with these issues, and so I've been asked to step in and help with this situation. And on the one hand, there's pressure to sort of jump in and grab a hold of it, and I've counseled, you know what, there's more at stake here than seeing to it that the finances are properly handled. That's the easy part. The more challenging part is helping this person come to terms with the transition. That is what's really at stake here. And that for me is the meaningful part of the work that I do. You can see the chaplain coming out, my 16 years in the Navy, helping people with, if not the same issues, similar issues. So if you want to have a career that allows you to truly help people and oftentimes help them when they need it most. So, being a professional fiduciary may very well be the career for you. Now, I should mention, by the way, that while in California, this is a licensed profession, that doesn't mean you can't do it anywhere else. Indeed, you can act as a fiduciary in all of the other 49 states. It's just there's no license for it. I would say, however, that there are different rules depending on the fiduciary role that you're going to take. So I think in Arizona, there may be a license for someone who's acting as a conservator and a guardian. Since I don't fill those roles, it's not relevant to me. So what I would say is, if you're living in another state or you're considering practicing in another state, make sure that you take a look at the various rules in each state for the type of fiduciary services in which you want to be involved. Okay. And the Center for Center for Guardianship, such and such. Wait, what is it called again? Hold on one second. I'll get you the name. Oops. Go back here. And oh no, it doesn't want to. Oh, the Center for Guardianship Certification. There it is. So the Center for Guardianship Certification, if you go to their website, they have a map on it that shows at least generally what the rules are in various states with respect to what qualifications you may need. Now, obviously, since they're a guardianship organization, that's their focus, is where you may need to qualify to be a guardian, okay, or a conservator for that matter. But that's a resource available to you, and I'll put that link in the show notes once this episode posts on YouTube. Okay, next, there is growing demand for this profession. So I'll talk about, so nationwide, I saw a statistic not too long ago. I think over the next 10 to 15 years or so, there will be a transfer of, hold your horses here, $30 trillion in wealth. $30 trillion. That is an absolutely enormous sum. Okay, not quite as big as our national debt, but it's about 80% of the size of our national debt. That's how much wealth is going to transfer. Here in California, I believe something like 20 or 25% of that amount will happen just here in California. And we have about 5,000 or 6,000 attorneys who handle probates and trust administration. There's about my professional fiduciary license is 1341. Okay, there's maybe been, I don't know, a couple hundred since then. So there's maybe 1,500 licensed professional fiduciaries. However, okay, not all of them are still working, number one. And number two, a lot of them are not qualified to act as personal representatives. So if that's your interest, okay, which is the focus of this show, there is a tremendous amount of opportunity, both here in California as well as across the country. So, anyone who tells you that it's a crowded profession, I would be skeptical that they actually know what they're talking about. Okay. First of all, for whatever reason, there are not a lot of lawyers looking to go into this area of law. They find other areas, corporate law, those sorts of things, for whatever reason, more interesting. So the average, from what my friend Joshua tells me, the average age of a probate attorney here in California is pretty high. I think high 50s, low 60s, something like that, as opposed to the overall median age of lawyers. So the lawyer population is little by little aging out, and professional fiduciaries aren't coming on board quickly enough to fill that gap. So there's lots of opportunity. It's even on the conservatorship side. The part of the population in general is aging. Okay, baby boomers are getting older, my generation, and people are living longer, but not necessarily maintain. And well, they are maintaining their faculties longer, but still, as people live longer and longer into their 80s and 90s and even into their hundreds, there are a growing number of people who, for various reasons, cannot continue to handle their own affairs. So if your interest is in being a conservator, I think there's growing opportunity there as well. In terms of guardianships, so this is an interesting aspect as well. As medical technology, as healthcare has improved, children who in previous decades may not have survived into teenhood and young adulthood are doing so now. However, the fact that they're living longer and more productive lives doesn't mean that they're able to handle their own affairs. So the need for guardians, I think, is also increasing. And if you're looking to combine the sort of principal care or patient care side of taking care of people with the financial side, or you're looking maybe to team up with someone who handles the financial while you handle more of the sort of patient or client care side. So there's opportunity growing there as well. Excuse me. Next, as a professional fiduciary, you have a lot of flexibility. So first of all, as I've been talking about, there are different areas in which you can practice. So you can choose one that fits your likings and your skill set and your experience. That's number one. Number two, you can work independently. So I don't have staff. I build teams on an ad hoc basis in order to handle the matter that is at hand. Okay. And in so doing, I can be more economical even than other professional fiduciaries who have built staffs, and they may have multiple fiduciaries working at the firm, and then they have administrative staff. Okay. So there are firms that work that way. So you can make that choice. Do you want to work independently? Do you want to work maybe in a partnership, or do you want to build a larger firm? That's all up to you. You can look to build a business, or you can look to join an established firm. So there's a whole range of career paths that are open to you if you decide if you decide to become a professional fiduciary. So in some ways, pardon me, it's like being in the real estate business. There are opportunities in the real estate business to work independently. You can work as what amounts to an independent contractor for another firm, Or you can get a job where you're essentially an employee. You can work in the more simple level. You can aspire to more complex cases. So all of that is within within the realm of what happens in the fiduciary business, and you can learn about them and craft your practice the way it suits you best. And then finally, on the pro side, so you have diverse responsibilities. So I've mentioned the two main ones already. That is overseeing medical care, number one, and managing or really administrating finances on the other. So those are two of the broad categories. Within them, though, so I know for myself on the financial administration side and the practical administration side, it's not just, the routine paying of bills and all the things we do, anyone does for themselves. There's an opportunity to oversee real estate. So I provide asset management services to real estate. I don't do the day-to-day property management, although I could. I have a firm to which I refer that out. They're very experienced in that. You just saw a commercial for them, Magnum Properties Inc. Okay, there's an opportunity to work with a lot of other professionals. I work with a lot of lawyers, accountants, wealth managers, wealth advisors, real estate agents, title company people, even engineers. I've got a particular estate right now where we've got an engineer. We've got a site, and there's, a building, and in the center of the building, the floor has sunk about 6 inches, right? And so I'm working with a lawyer who's engaging an engineer to check this out and find out what's going on, right? So I get to deal with a very broad range of issues and responsibilities. And I find that particularly interesting because from day to, it's not the same dull routine from day to day. Okay. Whereas in other jobs, if you're doing, I don't know, data input for an insurance company, so you're pretty much doing the same thing every day. For me, I couldn't take that, so the diversity of responsibilities of a professional at fiduciary is particularly interesting to me. Okay, let's take another quick break. Probate and Trust TV, your curated source for the most useful and insightful content on estate planning and trust and probate administration, featuring standout professionals like Bill Gross, Paul Brabelet, James Cunningham, and yours truly. Whether you're a lawyer, accountant, real estate professional, or working on your own succession plan, this channel helps you quickly find the clearest, most practical content YouTube has to offer. Subscribe now to Probate and Trust TV. Spend more time learning, less time searching. Okay, so we're back with this Trust and Estates Weekly, and I'm talking about the pros and cons of becoming a professional fiduciary. So I mentioned the pros before the break: meaningful work, growing demand, flexible practice, and diverse responsibilities. So those are the pros. Now, no profession has only pros to it. At least I've never found that profession. And maybe that's because no one seems to want to hire me to eat Rocky Mountain chocolates and coffee ice cream. If I could find that job, and read, right? I think there would only be cons to that. But of course, I guess the pro to that would be that, gain a lot of weight and live an unhealthy life. But in any event, there are cons to the profession, or they may be cons from your perspective. First of all, there is high liability and risk in filling a fiduciary role. So as a fiduciary, you are legally accountable for your decisions, and you may be legally accountable directly to the court if you're acting as the personal representative for an estate. You may be legally liable to the beneficiaries under a trust, who could then take you to court if they feel that you have breached your fiduciary duty. You could be under legal liability to the subject of a conservatorship or a guardianship, who again could file a lawsuit against you if they think that you have breached your fiduciary duty. Okay, so even if you make mistakes, you can still be held liable for those mistakes, even if they're made in good faith. Okay, so it's a very, very high level of responsibility, and with that comes a high level of liability and risk. Now, you can get insurance, professional liability insurance, highly recommended. Okay, and the best reason to have that is to pay for you to be defended in the event that you're sued. Okay, so because that's all, not always, but most of the time, that is the most expensive part about dealing with the liability and risks of being in any fiduciary position. Okay, because people can file lawsuits against you that have no merit. You're still going to need to defend them. So if that kind of situation is, if you find that situation difficult to difficult to handle, if you won't sleep at night if someone sues you, so then this is a very serious con to take into account if you're considering becoming a professional fiduciary. Okay, so high liability and risk, con number one. Number two, a lot of emotional and ethical challenges and conflicts. So I know in my profession, I typically am not asked to get involved unless there is some kind of conflict going on. Okay, the conflict may be between beneficiaries or heirs to an estate. It may be within an estate. Maybe the estate owns a business and the clients are upset because now the owner of the business has died and they're upset. They don't know what's going to happen. There can be conflicts. I had a big conflict with in one estate with U.S. Bank, which I found out did something similar in an estate that a friend and colleague of mine handled. They caused a lot of aggravation and grief by the way they handled the matter, and they sought, in my opinion, to maximize conflict rather than to to handle the matter appropriately. So there can be conflicts arising not from anyone within the matter itself, but parties or businesses or organizations outside the matter that are in some way connected to it. Okay, and they don't care. I mean, they will shed crocodile tears. We're sorry for your loss, but when it comes right down to it, all they care about is the money. so and there has been, frankly, more than once when I've been I felt I've been on very, very strong ethical grounds, meaning that what the other party is looking to do is unethical. Okay, but nonetheless, I ended up having to settle with that party because the cost to prove that they were acting unethically is unacceptably high. So if, like me, you have a kind of a high sense of justice, that justice should prevail, it can be taxing at times to do this work. For my own practice, this is one of the aspects that I find most challenging is having to make those calls when I have to say, nope, the cost to fight is too high. I can't justify defraying the assets of an estate in order to fight this. It's cheaper to just settle it and get rid of it, even though it means unscrupulous people are going to at least partly prevail. right? Now, if that really rankles you and it's going to keep you awake at night, again, this is a con that may preclude you from being a professional fiduciary. So I would give some thoughts to how you deal with conflict, how you deal with ethical and emotional issues. Are you able to work those through for the benefit of your client or the estate, and not get hung up on your own sense of, I'm not going to let them, trample me, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, there is a heavy regulatory burden to being a professional fiduciary, especially in a state like California, where there is a licensing regime. So you have to do continuing education. You have to pay that very large license fee each year. Okay. And so there's there's that aspect of regulatory compliance. Okay. There's also just compliance requirements in terms of proper bookkeeping and record keeping, all of that. To the extent that you're handling probates, you're responsible to the court. You're going to have to do, you may have to do periodic status reports to the court. You may have to do final accountings to the court. And so all of that takes time. There's a certain amount of detail orientation, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes, that's necessary to deal with the regulatory burden. Okay, as well. And I talked about this, I think, a week or two ago in terms of how to deal with beneficiaries who are in dispute. There, there's a very big emphasis on making sure that communications are properly documented. So even when I have a telephone call, in the vast majority of cases, I'm turning around and confirming what happened in that call through an email, especially if I think there's a chance that some kind of contention could result out of that telephone call. Otherwise, I do the vast majority of my communication through email, so there is a written record of what's gone on. Okay, so it's time consuming. It can be, frustrating at times. And so again, if that's something you find difficult to deal with, being a professional fiduciary may not be the right profession for you. And then finally, there is a demanding workload. So although I find in general, I'm able to manage my calendar pretty well, there are times when I'll be at dinner and the phone will ring and I see who's calling and I know I have to take this call. It means something important is going on and they need to speak to me. And for me to take the attitude, I'm at dinner, leave me alone, would not be appropriate. It wouldn't be a fulfillment of my fiduciary duty. Now, it may not be monetarily my fiduciary duty to pick up that phone at that time. But as I mentioned before, there's a whole emotional component to this type of work, and making sure that we attend to the emotional side of issues when we're dealing with people is a very important, it's a crucial aspect of acting successfully in the role of a fiduciary. So it can be demanding. It can be unpredictable. Okay, I had a matter, a proposed matter come up about a month ago, and the way things were shaping up initially, it was something I would have to step into in basically 24 hours and really grab a hold of. In the event, it turned out not to be as time sensitive, and that's fine. But those things come up. Okay, and in one of the estates that I'm still handling, it was incredibly chaotic for the first 5 or 6 months. It was large. There was a lot of things going on. There was no estate plan in force, and so it was really taxing to get all that put together. Okay, so it can be a demanding workload, and you may not always be able to control what's going on. Okay, so those are the cons. So for whom is it right to be a professional fiduciary? Well, first of all, you need to be detail oriented. Okay. This is not something you can fly by the seat of your pants. It's not something that you can let other people handle without proper oversight. You need to be detail oriented. You need to be on top of things. There are deadlines, and even though your lawyer may be responsible for deadlines with the court, you oftentimes are going to find you're the one who's making sure that deadlines get met. So you need to be detail oriented. I'm not going to dwell on that. I think it's pretty much self-explanatory. Next, you need to be a strong communicator. You need to be able to deal with people who are under stress, under anxiety, who are in conflict, who are in grief, and all of those create a situation where people may not be communicating as effectively and clearly as they would were they not under those stressors. And so the responsibility will fall to you to be the one to facilitate that communication and make sure that it goes at least reasonably well, so that whatever process you're handling goes as smoothly as possible. Okay, so you may need to mediate disputes. You'll need to explain decisions clearly, and you'll need to handle the emotional dynamics of the people involved. And so you need to have strong communication skills. And I would say being a professional fiduciary means working to constantly improve those skills. Okay. I know one of the things I find is um, I'm the most detailed communicator typically within my team when it comes to certain matters. So people will be talking about he's and she's, and I'm listening to them, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm pretty sure I know who this he's and she's are, but I'm not 100% clear, and so there's a good chance that the other team members are not necessarily clear, and so then I have to stop the person who's speaking and say, pardon me, but I need to interrupt. Who is the he or she, or the he's and she's about whom you're speaking? So it's also being that kind of mediator in communication to make sure everybody is on the same page. Next, you have to be comfortable making decisions. Okay. Now, hopefully you're comfortable making ethical decisions, because that's what's required of a fiduciary. But it's not a position where you can take a poll and decide what the decision is going to be. No matter how many advisors you have, in the end, the responsibility of the decision rests with you, the fiduciary. And so you need to be able to wear those decisions. If you wear them heavily, it's going to be a long, difficult professional life for you. If you wear them well, and you can make decisions with confidence, so then you'll do fine. Okay, but it's not for people who constantly are rethinking themselves. They make a decision and then they regret making the decision. It takes a certain amount of decisiveness. Okay. Now, there is a collaborative aspect to making decisions. And I know in my practice, I like to get as much input as possible from the various members of the team before I make a decision. Okay. However, it's my team members know they have, when it comes to certain areas, I'm going to defer the decision to them. Okay. So, for example, if a property is being marketed for sale, okay, I'm not going to be making the decisions about how to market that property. I'm not the expert. Okay. So, I'm going to be relying on them to be making that decision, or the decisions about marketing. However, I'm going to be making the decision about whether to sign an offer or not. They can highly recommend it. They can tell me I'm crazy. They can make their case. But in the end, I'm going to make that decision because that's a decision for which the court will rightly hold me responsible. Okay, so I'm not going to defer that decision to anybody. Okay, so maybe hopefully that gives you an idea of those areas. Okay, so you need to have a certain amount of decisiveness. You need to be comfortable making decisions, and I would say you need to be comfortable in evaluating the ethical components, the moral components of those decisions as part of the decision making process. Finally, I think you need to have kind of an entrepreneurial spirit in order to be successful as a professional fiduciary. Okay. I mentioned the different forms the business, your business or your practice might take, but they all come down to someone who is in business. Okay. And so having that entrepreneurial mindset is important for success. Uh, After you get a reputation, business may come to you, but until you gain that professional standing, you're going to have to go out and beat the bushes for clients. Okay, and there's just no two ways around that. So if you don't have an entrepreneurial mindset, if you don't have kind of an independent business mindset, maybe being a professional fiduciary isn't right for you. Okay. So those are the qualities that make being a, I think, the qualities you would want to have, and for whom being a professional fiduciary is right. For who is it not right? Well, if you are conflict averse, you do not want to be a professional fiduciary. Okay, because inevitably conflict arises. It can arise, as I mentioned previously, all the areas in which it can arise. If you have a lot of trouble dealing with conflict, if you have difficulty standing up for yourself, if you have difficulty hearing other people's opinions and thoughts, if you have a very thin skin, being a professional fiduciary is not right for you. Okay, I'm just going to leave it there. It's not. You need to have thick skin in order to do this. If you are someone who, next, if you're someone who deals with being held accountable, being a fiduciary is not the right profession for you, because you will be held legally and financially accountable for your decisions. That is fundamental to being a fiduciary. And I would argue, if you want to be a successful fiduciary, you should have the attitude you want to be held accountable. I tell my team members and clients pretty regularly, I want you asking questions. Okay. Better you ask questions now than be upset with the decision I made, and down the road, now we're in some kind of conflict. Okay. So hold me accountable up front. Question, when I say I'm going to take the following action, ask me the questions. That's my attitude, because maybe there's something I didn't think of that you will raise, and having raised it, I'll make a better decision. Okay, that's the level of comfort with accountability I recommend that you strive. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, if you're looking for predictable hours, the proverbial, 9 to 5, being a fiduciary is probably not the right profession for you, especially if you're going to be dealing with conservatorships and guardianships, where there's a client care component to what you're doing, a care in terms of their health and well-being. Okay. Issues to health and well-being are not confined to 9 to 5. They can happen at any time of the day or night. And you have to be prepared to deal with those situations. And if you're not, this is not work that you should be doing. And finally, if you are uncomfortable working in a regulated environment, being a professional fiduciary is probably not the right profession for you. So here in California, the state of California requires professional fiduciaries to report every year. They scrutinize those reports. I know they do. I just had mine scrutinized, and there was something I missed in it. Oh no, I'm sorry. I forgot to sign my certification of continuing education. And my attitude there's one lady who as far as I can tell, who handles the various license issues at the Bureau of Professional Fiduciaries. Very nice lady. And like, she sent me this thing the other day, and I'm like, oh, oops, and I said, hey, I apologize to it. I thought I had taken care of everything. Here it is for you. I appreciate you catching this and bringing it to my attention. Whether you like regulation or not, philosophically or politically, if you're going to be a professional fiduciary, you're going to be dealing with regulators, and you better be prepared to have a good, working, cordial relationship with them. They have their job to do, and they're going to do it one way or another. I highly recommend you build a productive relationship with those folks, because that will make your life easier. If you have trouble doing that kind of thing, again, this is not the right profession for you. If you're combative, especially when it comes to government regulation, this is not the right profession for you. So, for pros, for cons, for aspects of who you are that would recommend your being a professional fiduciary, for aspects of who you are that say no, don't do this. Okay, so there you go. That's what I have for you today. So I thank you very much for joining me, especially my live guests. Any thoughts, comments, criticisms, please put them in the show notes. Please feel free to post them. The social media links will be in the show notes. And let's see, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. On Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific is my show, People Making Money. And then on Wednesday is my every other week show, Jiggers' Place, at 5 p.m. And we'll have a cocktail and a schmooze. So if you know someone who you think would benefit from hearing this show, please pass it along to them. I would love to have them as a potential viewer, listener, and maybe even a subscriber. It'd be very, very, very much appreciate your doing that. So thanks again for joining me today. Wishing you a wonderful day. Hopefully I'll see you soon again later in the week. And signing off as I always do. Marie, darling, you are